What is up, everyone? I'm super ecstatic because today we have for you our InWin Z-Tower. Alright, so sitting right here is our InWin Z-Tower. As you can see, it's fully crated up. Supposedly this is a 160-pound crate, and the actual Z-Tower itself weighs 93 pounds. I've got James here with me, so we're going to get this over in the living room, go ahead and crack it open, put it on our table, and we'll give you guys a close-up view of the Z-Tower itself, and this will be our first time seeing it in person as well. On this side of the case, we actually have screws to take this panel off. There's some screws up here, but yeah, all the rest of this is stapled, including the back. So it looks like they're meant to just pull this off right here. They also have screws at the very bottom. Yeah, so it's possible that they maybe mean to take this whole thing off at once, potentially. Don't know, guess we'll find out. You can see it's got the Z-Tower printed on it. And you'll notice that down here, it's showing that we've got a silver and other option. They demoed at CES a black variant of this. We were explicitly looking for the silver one because we can always paint a silver one and revert it back to silver. But depending on how the black comes, especially if it's like anodized, it'd be really hard to revert it into a silver. As of the time of this video, supposedly only 3 of these have been distributed to the US for sale. I'm really curious as to which number we got because I've seen some of them go up to 90 serialized yet. InWin hasn't stated to us how many of these they've made. Many of their other small batches are usually around 250 of them, but this case being as expensive as it is, it's possible there's only, 100, 150 of them floating around. But like I said, I know there's only been 3 of them so far for sale in the US. They said they're thinking about maybe bringing 10 total. So I think half of that's going to be silver, so 5 silver and probably 5 black. Oh yeah, sure does. Actually has Z-Tower on it. Alright, so we've removed the screws at the bottom, and I think this is going to be the big reveal. We're hoping it just kind of lifts up, but I guess we're about to find out. Alright, ready? Seems like... Oh, go straight towards you. Holy crap. Whoa. Here it is, guys. This is the first look at our InWin Z-Tower. And of course, we have it backwards, but wow. Here in a second, we'll get it out on the table. Take a look at it. Look at this view straight down through it. So this is all hand cast aluminum, and you can see that on the back side it's still rough, and then over here they've got their polished edge. But because this is cast, they've got a lot of like kind of pitting marks every now and then coming around, so it gives us this really raw feel to it. Now, at least right now it looks absolutely stunning. So as soon as we get this on the table, we'll definitely do some glamour shots for you guys. Well, here she is, ladies and gentlemen. So we did get number 21. As you can see, unlike some of the other InWin cases, this is actually cast into it versus being an actual plate. And so it's really beautiful because you can just see kind of some of these almost even imperfections that kind of give it this very unique look to it. And you can see on camera right now, a lot of these dots and such are actual kind of pitting from the actual cast itself. It's been polished up. Just take a look at this thing. We'll definitely give you guys some glamour shots. Gotta catch my breath, this thing weighs a ton. So I just brought it upstairs and I wanted to show you guys how big this case is. And so I thought of a neat little demonstration to show you just how massive this case is. Alright, so you guys can see this thing right here. It is the same size as my whole entire rack for my server. So that's, I mean, that is a full-fledged data server, I mean UPS backups, all my networking gear, and this thing is just as wide, just as tall, and you can see it compared to my toe. I mean, this thing is absolutely massive, but clearly I need to find some way to set that toe on top of it. It would just be absolutely wild. Let me measure this thing for you guys. The top of it is roughly, roughly 22 inches or so wide. And it's about maybe 16 inches deep or so if you square up that arch. Now the base though, it gets pretty wide if you look at this piece over here that juts out. Yeah, the website's probably is right. It's pretty much like 30.5 inches or so from the widest point to the widest point. And then at the peak, you're looking at about 29 inches tall. And at the other side where it slopes down, almost 27 inches. I mean, that is absolutely insane. So up top here, this is all super rough, and you can hear my hand just gliding over it. And the backside of these huge fins, I guess for lack of a better term, are also rough on the backside. For I/O, we've got just your classic 3.5mm headphone jacks, two USB 2 or 3.0s plus USB-C. Then we have power button, and this thing is super solid. You can just hear it. It's got some good heft to it. So at least from the back here, we can see what I can only assume to be storage risers or hard drives. Large cutout holes to keep that kind of open air look throughout the whole thing. We have the riser panel here, and inside was the box for the dedicated riser cable from InWin, so you can vertical mount your GPU right here. And you can see that they've even got a special bracket here to invert that. And it is a 4-slot PCIe, so you could do a double stack dual card if you needed to, or you can do like a sideways triple thickness one. We have more cages here up front, and then of course the motherboard tray. So I guess the real question is how do you build in this? What do you do? Do you pull out the tray and then drop it back into this?
Yeah, I bet you can take that off.
Well, you could take these off, but they're also, this spirals around, and that's also what it's sitting on, right? Is it not? Well, kind of. You can see that it kind of has a foot here. Where are the rubber feet on this thing? Where are they floating? Right
here.
Oh, okay, so yeah, you can see the rubber feet. The rubber foot is actually attached to this bottom plate. So I guess that does mean to get into it, you could take the fins off. I guess let's break into the manual and let's take a look to see what all of this thing came with in the first place. So with the Z-Tower, we have this beautiful cardboard box. So why don't we break into it and see what all is in it. There we go. And basic motherboard standoffs, mount screws. We've even got some cable management. We have a cleaning cloth. We have a starred Allen key, so a torque set. A lot of specialty screws. I'm not 100% sure what those are for yet. I don't know if these have to do with mounting accessories to the motherboard tray, or maybe even mounting those spires. VIP club card. Do we not get a manual for this? You were dumb enough to pay this much for a case. Surely you can figure it out. Aha, everyone's gone all high-tech with their QR codes. Apparently we download the user manual. So let's break that out. So we have the user manual. So it's explaining I/O ports. It's showing a cutaway right here, so it does look like you're supposed to take off the spires, at least from a basic quick view of this. Wow, so here's a cutaway showing only 2 spires holding it up. Specifications, riser cable. Oh, so here's riser cable installation. It does have standoffs. Connect that directly, drop in GPU, pretty standard affair. Contents, Z-Tower, QR code, membership card, accessory box. So those screws are actually for radiator mounts. Interesting. When moving the case, hold onto the handle on the bottom. It is recommended to wear gloves as edges may be sharp. There's a handle on the bottom. Well, that's it. Short and sweet. Typical InWin style. So it looks like, following these pictures, we're supposed to take everything off except for maybe 2. So it looks like the ones that stay are the 2 wrapping around on the edge, which might be where those handles are located they're talking about. So supposedly there's a handle at the bottom of this. Not really. I admit, and when I'm not seeing what you're going for. So all of these screws, well, they are the same. So I guess it's just recommended. Well, it makes sense, because if you were to take off all these spires, you wouldn't be left with anything holding this structure up. Yeah, nothing other than the I/O shield, basically. The I/O shield is mounted to the motherboard tray and here. Wow, this is still just insane. Alright, well I guess we'll break out their torque key that they have and get these spires off. Alright, well this was fun for all of like 2 seconds. I'm gonna grab the drill. So you can see these screws are just absolutely recessed behind some of these. So taking these panels off is definitely not going to be a common occurrence, that's for sure. Oh, this is crazy. That, first piece off, and looks like it's labeled LF, which I can only assume means left front. And this is a pretty substantial piece by itself. I should grab the weight scale and let you guys know how much this actually weighs. It's not too crazy. This one piece is 8.5 pounds by itself. Now this is a hefty piece. You can see it's got an F over there for front. And now this piece, oh yeah, that's a big boy. This is 22 pounds by itself. This piece is heavier than some cases. That's wild. Another piece, we've got B for back. And this is a 13.5 pound piece. So all in all, those 3 pieces alone account for about 50 pounds of the Z-Tower. And now that they're gone, you can see that I really get my first view of the inside of this case. Now this right here is the best Z-Tower. Look at that aluminum casting. I can't believe the thing weighs 160 pounds, but I can probably believe it. He's a little fatty. So now that I have this open, we definitely get a better look for the first time of what's inside this case and how it's connected. So the actual motherboard tray is really only held up with 4 total screws. So if we come back here, you can see that right here is a mount to this bottom frame, and then there's another one on the opposite side. From there, it's attached near the I/O plane on an L bracket right here. So you could detach it right here on each side, or you can even come around to the front and remove those small screws up there. So now that's it. That's all that's supporting this inner frame. So you could potentially pull this out if you needed to work on it really easily, but I'm not sure you could pull it out of the Z-Tower without taking these sides off, because you can see that this piece swoops out and this goes underneath one of the curving arches that wraps around here. But you can see that inside is really sparse. It's all about the actual form of the spire and just being open frame. So you can see that we really only have 2 hard drive cages here for 2.5 SSD, and of course 3.5-inch drives, and we've got 2 of them. I'll need to check what those back plates are for. They might be for like pump mounts or something along those lines, but here's 2 of them right here. I had to remove one of these to get the screw out to the back. Then up top we've got a 360mm Rad Mount. It said in the manual that there was 115mm of clearance, which sounds about right, because if you look, this is the top of the motherboard right here. So I mean, that's a thick thick rad. And it had those special screws to dangle from, which makes sense because these are pretty deep right here, and I bet those are standoffs to kind of float it off the top of this. This is just insane, guys. You can see some of the cuts they had to make. Polish these up, and of course thread them to get them to attach to these spires. And they have a lot of holes back here. This must be for those cable mounts that they included in screws to thread into these. Probably just a basic M3 or M4 screw. So now the feet we were talking about earlier, you can finally see them here. So the reason we could take off those spires is that this is actually the support piece. And it's not under all of them, but right here we've got one. Here in the back we have one, and then vice versa on the opposite side over here. And because of that, we can take off some of these spires, well, all of them really, and this can support by itself. This might get a little flimsy probably when we remove everything, because you saw it was only attached via those 2 screws. That's more than likely while in the instruction manual they left 2 spires. I'm not sure I picked the exact same 2 they had. But as far as I can tell, this would give me access to everything inside that I need to build, and then I have to meticulously put the spires back on. Alright, so according to the manual, although I think they've got it backwards here, these are number 12, and we know that these are not 2.5 and 3.5-inch drive bays, seeing as these with the open cutouts definitely have the mounting holes for it. So these number 13 must be the multi-purpose brackets here, which would make sense. But it seems like the only place for these is actually in the back of the case. These holes don't match up with these here and do not seem to match up with any of these locations. They're close, but they're off by quite a bit. But of course, this is for the motherboard mounting. Well, that's it for this video, guys. It was a ton of fun to see the Z-Tower for the very first time, to see it kind of torn down. Can't wait to build in this. We've got tons of great ideas for review builds and for some mods for this case. Please subscribe if you wish to see more with it. Otherwise, I can't wait to build.